God, Mum, you're not on Tinder.
Most people call it plenty of fuck.
We're going to make you a profile.
The Playing with Matches podcast, where women talk about their experiences dating online. Hello, I'm Mark, and welcome to Playing with Matches, the podcast where women talk about their experiences dating online. We're on episode 12. That means we've laid a dozen eps so far. No time for silly facts about the number 12, though, ironically, as clocks are famously built around 12 numbers. We have a lot to get through today. We are about to meet Ali, spelled ally. And Ali is all about allies. She deals with some hot topics and has some very definite no-nos with regards to whom she'll date. All of which are dealt with in her bio, which she reads out, if only people would actually read it before they messaged her. No Tories and no ists, at least no racists, ableists and homophobics. That's not an ist, but it also is, I guess. She mentions some quite specific cultural references, but if you don't know what she means, she highly recommends using Google. Other search engines are available. Are they though? Really? Anyway, she'd rather you did your research than ask her to explain it all to you. Ali also addresses the issue of binary denominations on dating apps. If you're non-binary, do you have to pick whether you're a bit more masculine or a bit more feminine? This interview took place a couple of years ago at the end of the lockdowns, and I'm not sure what the gender settings are on the big dating apps these days, but it's an interesting point. Ali is bisexual and mixed race. She discusses in depth what that's like when you're dating online. She also has ADHD. She explains at the beginning of the interview that might mean she goes off on many tangents. And that may be true. But she always finds her way back to the main road of what she was trying to say. And there's much to keep you entertained and interested. She's had many adventures, none of which I want to spoil right now. There's a lot to reflect on, so let's just let Ali tell you her story. I'll be back at the end for beer and biscuits. Until then, take it away, Ali.
I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of opinions, a bit disjointed perhaps. I have ADHD. My thought trains are derailed, to say the least, but I try and end up at my point eventually. I'm not actively on dating apps anymore because my entire saga has a happy ending. I'm currently in a very happy, fulfilling relationship. But the past 3 years has been an adventure, to say the least. I'll read my about me. So my first line is no hookups, no married or non-single people, no Tories, parents, smokers, or people that are younger than me, please. And then it says, I'm following more dogs than people on Instagram. Based in Bristol, I'm 27 and 5'7", and I like to feel little, so please be taller and older than me. And I'm from Argentina and Scotland. I actually have the Argentinian and Scottish flag emojis, but I'm paraphrasing. And then it says, I'm looking for a long-term, ethically non-monogamous relationship with someone who is stereotypically good-looking, but with non-stereotypical interests, because I think I'm really funny. A tall, handsome someone to hide behind during the scary parts on TV. I love early bedtimes, but I hate early mornings. I'm not interested in hookups. I had to mention it again. I'm not interested in hookups or being a third or a unicorn for a couple. Think Gomez and Morticia Adams over Prince Charming and Cinderella. Although I am known to disappear off home once the clock strikes 12. And then I have my dislikes, and I say I dislikes are drugs, vegan and spicy food. I'm an omnivore and a wimp. The Tories, because I'm liberal, turfs and swerfs and children. And my likes are chart music, puns, BDSM, dance, ethical non-monogamy, polyfidelity, cuddly toys, and sushi. I don't give out my number to people I haven't met in person. I'd rather chat on here for now. And that is like the main first section of my profile. All of my other dating profiles are kind of excerpts or summarized versions of that. I saw someone on Tinder, it was I think like a meme, it went around the internet, where someone had made a PowerPoint presentation about themselves and what they were looking for and posted the slides as their photos on Tinder, which was just incredible and like spot on, totally my kind of person. I think I did try to talk to him. I think I found him on Tinder. We ended up it wasn't a good match in the end, but like it was just like I just had to commend him for his excellent way of getting around the character limit. I started using dating apps around 3 years ago after my last long-term relationship ended. Before that, I'd kind of been a serial monogamist, just going from relationship to relationship, and I'd always met them through like school and then university, and mutual friends. And so 3 years ago, I was out of university. I'd moved to a new city. I didn't know that many people, so I didn't have as many kind of sources of people to talk to and get and be set up with. So I went down the dating app route, and it started with one. I got OkCupid, and then I got Bumble as well, and then I finally decided, fine, I'll get Tinder as well. I think at one point I had like 6 different dating apps that I was using, quality varying of the people that were on there. I've spoken to lots of different types of people, and gotten lots of different experiences from them. As in verbally, I should have I meant experiences verbally is what I meant. So the profile that I just read out became that way through realizing how much I needed to spell shit out for people. At first, it was just like, hi, I'm me. These are the, surface level things that I'm into. I like dancing. I like music. I like dogs. And then I started realizing, okay, actually, political leanings is important to me. Fuck the Tories, basically. I need to make it very clear that I'm not interested in you if you're a Tory. I also need to make it very clear that I'm not interested in you if you're homophobic. Also, if you have children. And it's kind of one of those things where through talking to people, they would say something or I'd ask a question and realize, oh, that's actually a deal breaker for me. Better make that obvious. I kind of approached dating in the mindset of like my online dating kind of presence, in a sense of I want to save you, the prospective swiper, and me, the person who's doing this, as much time as possible. I want to save everyone as much time as possible. I will put as many of my cards on the table as I can, and you can take the 2 minutes to read that and decide whether you want to continue get to know me and whether you think that, we would get along. It's surprising the amount of people who don't bother to do that, and will, for example, I'll very specifically say I'm not looking for a hookup, and people will swipe and immediately go, do you want to fuck? Did you read? And that's why it ended up being the first line of the profile, in the hopes that someone would catch it. And I hate how it sounds, because it looks like a really negative profile. I'm immediately going in with no this, no this, no this, no this. It ended up having to become that way because people don't read. There are definitely people who are just going in and going, oh, that's a face, swipe right. Immediately ignore everything that's written down. But to be fair, the pictures that I had up also changed a lot over time because of the types of responses that I would get. I had, there was a photo of me doing pole dancing because that's one of my biggest hobbies. And it was originally one of like the first photos because it's like, hey, I'm doing this really cool thing that's a big deal to me. And all of the messages would be like, oh, that's super hot. You should give me a private show. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, right, move that to the back. Change the image so it's not so sexual. I mean, part of me there was like an internal balance and like struggle in my mind of like, I shouldn't have to moderate myself. I shouldn't have to censor myself in order for people to treat me with respect. And at the same time, I cannot be asked to deal with the idiots online. So it was like a balancing act of how much do I just make this easier for myself and how much do I sacrifice, but also I still want to be my authentic self and be very upfront about who I am. But yeah, definitely there are people who just don't even bother to read anything and just swipe for the number. They play the numbers game, which is stupid because you'll never get that. The numbers game is where you'll just swipe right on every single person you see in the hopes that one of them will land, which is dumb because it means that you're not actually investing in yourself. I think you've got to think about what you actually want to get out of a dating app. If you actually want to meet someone and connect with them and form a possible relationship with them, why would you just lower your standards so low that you just say yes to anyone? Like, treat yourself with higher worth than that. Give yourself the respect that you deserve. Have standards. Say no. I think the pandemic has definitely it definitely brings out the people who you can tell really don't actually care how serious it is, because they will still say, oh, let's meet up. And it's like, we're in a lockdown, or, you know, we're isolating, and they'll be like, oh, it's no big deal. I'm like, yes, it is. People are dying. And if anything, that just shows, if you're willing to kind of put potential lives at risk because, you know, you want to, pardon my language, but you want to get your dick wet. Like, if that's, you know, what does that say about your attitude towards sexual health when it comes to STIs? What does that say about how you respect the people around you? It shows that you have very little care for anyone but yourself. Other examples I have of men being dicks is the amount of racism that I encounter. So I'm mixed race, I'm half Latina, and I am proud of that. And I happily have the Argentinian flag on my dating profile. And so I've had messages saying, oh, I've not tried Argentinian before, as if I'm a food. Or they go, oh, you must be really fiery, or you're spicy, or I've been called exotic more times than I can count. And again, it's racist, it's dehumanizing, and it's an instant block from me. Unless I'm feeling particularly angry that day, and I'll decide to argue with them and tell them how much they're a dickhead before blocking them. Lots of sexism as well, kind of from your bog standard, like, oh, you're pretty smart for a girl, like all these kind of like things that they consider compliments but are incredibly backhanded and very sexist in their root. I think the racism really stuck with me because I hadn't encountered it to that level until I was on a dating app. The worst ever case of racism that I encountered was when I was talking to a guy, and he was trying to show me how, oh yeah, I'm definitely a really dominant man, and, you know, I can do all of this stuff. And I'm like, we can talk like normal people. You don't have to kind of belittle me, you know. And he was like, oh, I can see that you're from a third world country. Makes sense. You're an ape. Literally he called me a monkey. And it really shocked me. Like, that's low. That's really low and disgusting. So I told him he was an asshole, and then blocked him, but not before I took screenshots of the entire conversation. And through his username, I found his Twitter profile. And through his Twitter profile, I found out his surname. And from his surname, I found his dad on Facebook and messaged his dad all of the screenshots that his son has sent me. And the dad was rightfully shocked, didn't believe me at first. But I was like, look, I gain nothing from telling you this other than, like, this is the kind of person your son is. Like, I would be ashamed if that was my child. And then I was just like, look, you have the information, do with that what you will. I don't know what he did with that. I don't know if he ever spoke to him, but I just have the satisfaction of knowing that, like, I did what I could to really punch that guy in the face from a safe +2 meter distance. I reported him as well, but like dating apps do much anything. I mean, I've definitely not seen evidence that a dating app has actually done anything to follow through on people being reported for discriminatory behavior. I think it's very easy to feel like whoever you're speaking to isn't a real person as well, and that you feel like your words are of no consequence or have no impact on that. I'm very lucky that I have a strong support network in friends and family, but even some of the comments I've received have really upset me. You know, they've either angered me, especially if I'm just starting to talk to that person. But if it's someone that I've kind of been talking back and forwards for a couple of days, and I'm like thinking, oh, maybe this has some potential, and then they say something that's quite hurtful. It is hurtful, and I am hurt, and I am a person with feelings, and it's just people don't stop to think about what the impact of their actions are. And especially when, you know, you're just on a screen, you're just talking to a screen, and you don't really know that person. I've been talking a lot of doom and gloom. I've had plenty of positive experiences on dating apps as well. I have spoken to, even if they didn't all like end up with meeting and going on a date, I've spoken to some really lovely people, usually people whose, you know, views and morals align really well. I have made some really lovely friends. I'm not going to like mention names, but there was one person that I matched with on a dating app, and they kind of started telling me about how they thought they might be trans. And like we'd already established at this point that we weren't compatible for other reasons. But we were still talking because they were still a nice person. And they kind of said this, and I was like, oh my God, that's a huge thing to reveal to someone you don't know. Thank you. And also, let's talk more about that. And yeah, like a couple months, maybe a year later, like, yeah, we're friends on Facebook now. They came out as trans, and it's like, oh, cool person that I met online is now a friend. And that's awesome. Then there's also been other cases where I've matched with someone, there's been some lovely flirting, some chemistries going on. It's exciting. And this was before, so this would have been like 2 years ago. So, before pandemic. And we meet up and it's like, yes, the chemistry is there. The interaction is there. We're having a drink. It's lovely. There was one guy that I dated for several months. That was wonderful. And things end as they do. But yeah, no, there's been some wonderful experiences. I think one of my favorite date stories that for me just kind of sticks out as being like a positive, entirely random, was never going to go anywhere, but I just love that I had this experience anyway, was I got to go on a date with a girl who was an extra in Wonder Woman as one of the Amazons. And she was so beautiful. I was very intimidated, but I kept it cool, obviously, because, I keep my cool in these situations, obviously. But she was gorgeous. And, we talked a lot about dance and, how she does a lot of she was really into her fitness. And I was already at this point being like, this isn't going to work purely because our lifestyles are so different. I mean, yes, we both love dance, but your commitment and dedication to health and fitness is more than I can realistically deal with in a long-term relationship, and that's fine. But we ended up we had a lovely picnic in Bath, and then we ended up going for drinks, and then we went to a salsa club, and it was just this whole night that made no sense but was great. And then I got on the train and got home, and we kind of exchanged a couple of messages and then kind of respectfully kind of went our own ways. But that's got to be one of my favorite random dates I've ever been on. So I always try to kind of establish as many deal breakers as possible before agreeing to meet with someone, because like I said before, I don't want to waste anyone's time and I don't want to waste my time. So once I've established that I'm like, yeah, you're not a Tory, you don't have children, you're not a homophobic, racist, sexist, horrible, standard, you think standard moral things that you shouldn't have to ask someone about, but we live in a world where we do. So once I've established that they're not a terrible human being, I mean, apart from the children thing, you can have children and not be a terrible human being. That's just a personal thing that anyway, once I've established that they're not a terrible human being, I'm normally quite quick to say, right, let's meet in real life, because why not? I'll try to always kind of be like a cafe for coffee, or maybe one drink. I obviously don't want it to get too alcohol heavy, because then judgment is impaired and it can just lead to disaster. So especially if it can be a lunchtime thing, that can be quite nice. I try to make sure that the dates don't last too long, generally, unless it's just going incredibly, in which case, yeah, sure, whatever, keep going. But generally speaking, my dates will only last an hour or two. Just kind of get a flavor of what are you like as a person. If I still feel after leaving this date that I'm like, oh, that wasn't enough time and I still want to talk to you again, that's a good sign. But normally it's about a week after matching with someone if I'm able to kind of talk to them quite a lot, because as much as I don't like to waste time, and I'm also very impatient, so I'm like, right, we've got the basic conversation down, let's see if it that carries on into real life. So I guess I'd say I had maybe 2 or 3 relationships that lasted longer than just, 1 or 2 dates. One guy, none of them lasted more than a couple of months. But I mean, one that happened from 2018 to 2019 was very serious. And, I loved him. Drama. Mistake. But it was he was super lovely and we got on really well, and it ended up falling apart for kind of personal reasons that I'm not going to super go into. But yeah, I've definitely had what I would call successful short-term relationships come out of it. There was one kind of relationship that I got out of it which actually kind of technically spanned over a year, but it was never going to be a monogamous. It was a friends with benefits relationship that I got, and I considered incredibly successful because we got what we wanted from it and we became really good friends for a time, and had a wonderful kind of sexual relationship where we were both very happy. It ended the way that things often go, where I got feelings a bit too much. But I mean, he kept his boundaries very clear and made it very clear that that wasn't what he was looking for. And I had to kind of like internalize that and be like, okay, that's fair. I will call it here now out of respect for you and myself, because if, I clearly want something that you don't want, aren't giving. And that's fine. You don't owe me that, but I also owe myself the respect of ending things. In my most recent relationship, the one that I'm in right now, we matched. It's a lockdown relationship where we matched. In between lockdowns, we went on one date, and it was immediately like, yes, you are good. I like this. I like you. Let's continue this. And it was a very, very mutual feeling. And now we love each other. And it's really gay and lovely. And we're planning on moving in together later on this year. So it has a happy ending at the end of it all, despite all of the drama that I've dealt with over the last 3 years. There were moments in time where we couldn't see each other because of government restrictions, and then moments where we could, and we cherish those moments a lot. I'm still kicking myself that I've managed to find someone that I'm this obsessively in love with, which is disgusting. Can I just point that out? It's vile. Like, it's disgusting. It's one of those things where I'll be like, oh, I'm so in love. That's horrible. That's disgusting. Why? Just in the kind of, it's really sickly. It's the typical like, oh, it's so disgustingly cute. We're so cute. I hate it. So I'm still kind of kicking myself that I found someone that is so aligned to me and wants the same things out of life as well as in a partner. I'm kind of like, is this real? I'm pinching myself like, what am I going to do? How am I going to catastrophically fuck this all up? Surely I'm going to do something wrong. Something's going to go wrong and it's all going to go wrong. But nothing's gone wrong so far. So hopefully it will just continue that way. So I've been on dates where there's just instantly been no chemistry. And I've known kind of from the first 5 minutes that it's a no. But you can't just get up and leave, can you? You have to kind of, I've personally felt like I've had to sit there for like an hour and make polite conversation. And as soon as I possibly can be like, oh, I've got to go. And then kind of message afterwards saying it's, there's no connection. There's no chemistry here. There was one date where I forgot to check what their political views were. And halfway through lunch, he said he was a Tory. And in that moment, I was like, oh, hell no. I immediately lost a lot of respect for him, finished my food, and then immediately said, I'm going now. I made it very clear why. And he was just like, it's fair enough. He kind of tried to protest it a little bit. And I'm like, no, it's fine. It's, thank you for talking with me. I'm going to go now. Ever since that one, I got a lot better at saying, I'm not comfortable, or I'm not feeling this anymore. I'm just going to go, to the point where it led to a joke with my housemates where if I was going to leave to go on a date, I would say, I'll either be back tomorrow or in like half an hour. There's no in between. There's one horror story, I think the worst horror story, which was one of the relationships that I got from dating. We matched, everything seemed golden and wonderful and perfect to start. I was like, oh yeah, boxes are being ticked left, right and center. How could this possibly go wrong? And really, I should have known it was going to go wrong before we even met, because we had an argument, or we had a debate over message and then over the phone. And I kind of said, it was like, we fundamentally disagree. He was talking about how he thought that the Black Lives Matter protests were too violent. And he was like, why can't people just protest peacefully? And I had to explain, explain there are many reasons why peaceful protest realistically doesn't work. And, if it did, we would, but it doesn't. So we don't. And he kind of failed to understand why. And so I kind of got very annoyed. I got very angry, and kind of put the phone down. And he texted me afterwards saying, oh, I've thought about it and you're right. And then he said what terrifies, he said, I want to tell you I love you, but it's too soon and I shouldn't. I'm like, we've not we've not been on a date yet. But I just kind of was like, that's weird. I'm going to look past it. I don't know why I decided to look past it. Then we went on our first couple of dates. He admitted to having a dark past that he wasn't ready to share, but when he was ready, he would tell me because I deserved to know. Again, should have maybe picked up on that and done something about it. But no, I didn't. Why? We will never know without delving into it a lot with a therapist. Then he admitted that he had a child, but didn't see them, and it was sole custody to the mother. And at this point, we'd gotten to know each other better, and I decided that I quite liked him, despite these flags that are just happily ignoring. And I was like, well, seeing as, you don't have any custody and you don't see the child, I guess I'll look past that, without stopping to ask why he didn't have custody of the child. Probably something I should have asked, but I was so happy that he didn't deal with the child. I was like, oh, brilliant. Okay, so I can just pretend the child doesn't exist. There's no child involved. And then a couple weeks later, we were having this conversation. It's actually really grim. It was about having sex on your period and just the topic generally of it. And he was talking about how it was disgustingly gross. And I'm like, you're a 35-year-old man. Grow up. What? That's stupid. Bodies are bodies and they do disgusting stuff. Like, what? But he wouldn't back down on that. And it escalated into this argument where I started talking about mental health, and mental health got brought into it. And I said, clearly, you're not going to change on this. And this, all of the topics that we've been talking about up until this point, these are things that I can't budge on, and you're not going to change. And that seemed to spark something in him where he went, change, you don't know anything about changing. I've changed. I'm a sex offender. I was in prison 5 years ago. What? This was the dark past. He felt like, I deserved to know, but at some point later down the line, what I realized that now meant was that I'm going to trap you in a relationship where I bombard you with love and tell you how much I love you. And then when you feel like you can't leave, I'm going to give you this horrible, horrifying news that meant that you couldn't consent to anything that we've just done, but you can't leave now because I love you so much and you feel so loved, right? Textbook. And the textbook manipulation continued because he then kicked me out of his house. I was waiting outside his house for my friend to come pick me up because I had messaged them immediately being like, come get me. This is a disaster. Everything's gone horribly wrong. He kicks me out of his house. He then comes out and tells me, oh, no, baby, come back in. It's fine. It's fine. I'm like, no, I'm going now. I was like, I'm seeing all the flags now. All of the flags have suddenly popped up and I'm seeing everything for what it is. I'm leaving. And then proceeded over the kind of following couple of days to message me with kind of classic hot and cold manipulation, saying, I miss you so much. Fuck off. You don't deserve me anyway. Come back. I love you. I don't want to, this is your last chance. You had, this, you ruined this. And I was watching it, and it was almost funny to me at this point. I was just like, you couldn't it's like you copied and pasted this out of a fucking manipulative textbook. Like, this is so obvious. And yeah, so that was a hellfire of a situation. And to be honest, I still feel I feel very uncomfortable about the entire experience, especially knowing that, he was in prison for one of the most horrible reasons. And I, at the time, thought I was consenting to have sex with him, when really that's the sort of information that you should know up front about someone. I put together my own conclusion, which maybe is a little conspiracy theorist, but I know for a fact that he was in prison 5 years ago. His daughter is 5 years old, and he no longer has custody of the child. And I'm wondering if the child was born as a result of assault. That is purely speculation on my part. I have no idea if it's true. The only thing that I do know is that he's not on the public sex offenders register if the name that he told me was his name is real. Because I could not find him on the public sex offenders register. And the public sex offenders register is only for assaults to someone who's a minor. So I know it's not a child sex offense. That's the only thing I know. But as for what it is, I don't, and probably never will. So that's pretty horrific. And that's taken a real dark turn. But hey, you meet these kinds of people on dating apps, and that's terrifying. I think that if you don't have wide kind of circles of people that can introduce you to other people, if you don't, you don't have like lots of different hobbies that mean that you interact with different people in person, dating apps are probably the best way. I mean, dating apps are a great way to meet people that you otherwise might never have met, because it doesn't rely on you knowing someone who knows someone. I think that they are very flawed, and they're certainly not perfect, but they are currently one of the only ways to meet people. I would for the purpose of dating and relationships, I'd say. I think that dating apps could do a lot more to screen for problematic behavior, racist, sexist, homophobic, etc. behavior and comments. They could do a lot more. I think also for the sites that are preset, have a lot of preset kind of things that you can tick to say, yes, I am this, or no, I'm not that. The range, especially on gender, is incredible. I mean, so many apps are still, are you man or are you woman? And by that, we also mean, do you have a penis or do you have a vagina? It's still incredibly binary, and it's so boring and tiresome. Like, come on. We all know that gender is a massive spectrum. Sexuality is a massive spectrum. It is not a binary. And so many apps are still incredibly lazy and don't bother with that. Then also the kind of, are you interested in, you can possibly only be interested in looking for men or only looking for women. I mean, even sometimes the option to look for both is limited. So I think there's a lot of work that dating apps can do there to make them more inclusive. Having the ability to have it be more diverse and inclusive would definitely increase the usage of it, because more people would feel able to be themselves on dating apps and actually, say, yes, this accurately represents me and who I am and what I'm looking for. Some of the things that I found frustrating were like, there's a lot of like paid features, which I get, the dating apps have to make their money somehow, but can be very restrictive on some levels. Like, you can't filter for certain things. Like, if you have certain deal breakers that you definitely have, there are some apps that won't let you filter on characteristics unless you pay. And for me, it's off-putting, because it's like, well, now I have to spend more time going through people that I know I'm not interested in until I find the ones that have said that they're X, Y, and Z. But that's just me being real nitpicky, to be honest. I have all of the things that I consider like your bog standard things that you might put on a dating profile. And then I have these extra 2 curveballs that people often would ask me about, because I would mention polyamory and I would mention on my profile BDSM. Mentioning polyamory on a dating profile is becoming more and more common, or more like socially accepted for people who are polyamorous. I mean, you still get a whole ton of questions, people being like, oh, does that mean you're cheating on your partner? Oh, does that mean you can have sex with whoever you like? Which can be, it's annoying and tiring. And it's just like a quick Google search would tell you that is not the case. People seem so unwilling to bother educating themselves on anything that they don't understand on. And they will just make assumptions and they'll be like, oh, I'd rather you just tell me. It's like, why are you so lazy? But yeah, at least putting polyamory on there, like it's more, I saw more and more profiles kind of mention polyamory as my time on dating apps went on. Field is an app more tailored, or it's designed more successfully for people in polyamorous relationships. And the way that it works is that it allows you to link your profile with another person's profile and say, we're in a relationship, but we're also, we're still available dating wise. So I have when I was on Field, my girlfriend was also on Field. We were both looking for partners separately, but our profiles were linked to kind of be like, yeah, and I also have a girlfriend. That was the amount of threesome requests was boring, and just so many, and just immediately, nope, that's not what this is about. That's not what we're looking for. But yeah, but then, so Field is, designed for that. I would mention it on other dating apps anyway, because it's, still part of who I am and one of the things that I like to put my cards on the table for. And I'm all about that compatibility life. There are plenty of people who I know that won't immediately talk about it because it's a taboo topic, or because, they feel like they won't, get to talk to as many people, or they'll have, less success. Some people just prefer to bring it up later on. The idea of bringing something that integral to your life that late on into talking to someone is terrifying to me, because I'm personally a fan of having the big serious conversations as soon as possible. Again, to save yourself pain later on in life. I couldn't imagine dating someone for months, thinking I could plan a life with them, only for them to turn around and say, so I really want children. And I'm like, well, shit, I'm in love with you, but I don't want that. Now the entire relationship has to end, because that is a fundamental incompatibility, which will just turn into resentment further down the line. It's a weird conversation to have. So what, on a dating app, so do you want children? And people can get really freaked out about that. But if you can just say yes or no, that saves me so much time. It saves you so much time. I ended up just having a list of conversation topics that I would just say to someone and be like, these are a list of topics that are important to me. Would you indulge me in talking about them super quickly with me? It doesn't need to be a long conversation. I can summarize my views super quick if you're willing to listen. And some people would be like, nah, too much work, I'm out. That's fine. Not wasting my time with you. And other people would go, sure. And then they'd see the list and be like, what the fuck? This is like marriage level questions. I'm like, conversations that I have with my friends all the time. And then other people would go, sure. And we'd have a conversation, and either we'd be like, cool, so we're in agreement, let's keep talking. Or in oh, no, this doesn't match up. And I could very happily say, lovely talking to you. Thank you for taking the time to answer those questions with me. I'll go now. Some people get really angry at that. They'd be like, but none of this is like, this is all just like, none of this is relevant to dating. I'm like, this is all incredibly relevant to dating, because it tells me who you are as a person and whether you as a person are right for me in my life. I don't think it's any less romantic though. I mean, for me personally, maybe just because I love data and spreadsheets, but I personally think having a list of things that as you go down, it can be like, and you're like this too, we agree on this too. That, if anything, is like more romantic in this. It maybe is a little bit weird. It's not kind of our eyes met across the room and I instantly knew they were the one. Like, it maybe isn't that. But also that's highly unrealistic. But kind of being able to kind of sit and have this kind of meaningful, deep conversation and realize that we are fundamentally on board, on the same page. I think you feel a level of connection a lot stronger and a lot deeper for that person, knowing that your core values are the same. And that, for me, fills me with so much love for that person, knowing that kind of, if anything, it makes me feel safe with that person, because I know that they'll back me up. If it's kind of an us against the world situation, I know that they'll have my back. I don't have to worry that in an argument they're going to turn around and be like, actually, I disagree. Trans people don't deserve these rights. And that level of safety and kind of emotional security that I then have with that person is, again, a very romantic thing to have and a very love-filled thing to have. So it might seem a little methodical to go through a list of questions, but I think if that's the kind of person that you are, and that kind of way of getting to know someone brings you joy, I think that can be an incredibly romantic thing to do. But then, yeah, romance is subjective, and people like different things and look for different things in people, and have different priorities. Like for me, I've listed, political views, religious views, children, all of these things. Those are things that are really important to me. And are fundamental deal breakers. Other people don't have that. Like, they might have different priorities in their life. For them, a deal breaker might be like, hiking is a really big part of my life. I need to know that you will also enjoy camping and hiking. Whereas, sure, I don't really like hiking or camping, but it doesn't faze me nowhere near as much if you do, as opposed to you wanting children. So people prioritize different things. And I think it's about just knowing what's important to you and being able to communicate that openly, honestly, and respectfully. My methods have been accused of being like quite cutthroat and saying, oh, but you don't talk about politics on the first date, and if you met someone organically, you might realize that they're a lovely person before finding out that maybe their politics or their other ideologies don't align with you. And while that's entirely true, you can get to know someone kind of more quote unquote organically by talking about a plethora of other kind of less heavy, serious topics. But that just means that 3 months down the line, you're going to meet the exact same fundamental, fact that here is something that you fundamentally disagree on. And for some people, that's a serious deal breaker. And if anything, doesn't that hurt more? You've invested time and energy and emotions into someone that you got to know, and you're like, oh, our music tastes are the same, and we like the same food, and we enjoy the same TV shows. Oh, but they don't think disabled people should have rights. That's not okay. and you might love this person, you might be living, and if you avoid these topics so early on, I mean, I understand why people avoid them. They're not necessarily fun conversations to have, and they can be really heavy, and they take all of the light-hearted, flirty fun out of dating. But for me personally, I think it's worth having those awkward first conversations, just to be sure, because then I can go ahead and fully throw myself into the light-hearted, fun, flirty dating, knowing that they're a good person. And for me, that pays off, and would also explain why all of the relationships that I had when I was meeting people organically eventually failed. So it works for some people, it doesn't work for others. It depends what your priorities are. It depends what your non-negotiables are. So dating apps have finally kind of gotten around to the idea that gay people and bisexual people exist, and they will let you say, I am a man searching for a woman, or a man searching for a man, etc., etc. Where the issue does lie is when it comes to recognizing genders that are not cis male and cis female. So let me take Bumble, for example. Bumble is this whole thing where it's like women message first, and men have to be, men can't do that. What if you're non-binary? You are neither a man nor a woman. Do you then have to kind of force yourself into a particular category? Like, are you more of a feminine non-binary? Are you more of a masculine non-binary? Like the concept basically starts to fall apart quite quickly when you take into account that there are more than just two genders. People who are non-binary or gender fluid or agender, a lot of dating apps, their gender is not listed, and it's not an option for them, which can be incredibly exclusionary, because believe it or not, queer people date too. Revolutionary, who'd have known? But members of the LGBT community also like to go on dates. In fact, a massive percentage of the population is queer in some way. Why would you not, as a company, not want to provide for that? Like, it's purely a strategic marketing move. Like, even if you're not actually like an ally, if you just want to look at it in terms of money, you lose nothing by making your apps more inclusive. I'm kind of very fortunate in the fact that I am a cis woman and I am just bisexual. Like, I am able to just kind of say, I am a woman and I'm interested in, my gender and other genders, and fine. But I do know that there are other people that have it a lot more difficult and experience a hell of a lot more discrimination and abuse for being public about their gender. The group that Joanna posted in, which is where I found this out, which is called Get in the OKC, which is where people share a lot of their dating horror stories. And it's, people of all genders are in those groups. And I think more and more recently, as more and more people join the group, we're seeing so many examples of, unfortunately, typically cis men being incredibly ignorant and offensive and rude. I realize that this isn't my story to tell, but just one of the examples is of, a person who identifies as non-binary, but presents very feminine, like stereotypically feminine, and they'll match with a man and the man will go, oh, you're super attractive, blah, blah, blah. I'm straight. And the non-binary person will go, well, I'm not a woman. So if you are interested in dating me, you're not entirely straight. And they will double down and insist, oh no, it's fine, I'm straight, because realistically I see you as woman light. And it's kind of, these things come out of the woodwork, and it's terrifying and incredibly offensive. I mean, I want to caveat, that's not really my story to tell. And I'm sure that other people who are gender non-conforming will tell those kinds of stories way better than I can. But it's just kind of a small glimpse and an insight into how, all things considered, I'm pretty lucky. My girlfriend and I met a long, long time ago through mutual kind of LGBT communities. And we were friends for ages before we kind of both realized, oh, actually, I fancy you. So we've been together. We got together right before the pandemic as well. So the pandemic, we got together at the start of March. And then at the end of March, everything was locked away. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll see you never, but I'll just talk to you on Zoom and stuff. Devastated. Oh dear. But we've made it, and it's fine, because I think it really helped that we were friends for so long beforehand in this particular case, because we already were super comfortable, and it was just kind of there's just extra level of love attached to our, this relationship, and so that's really lovely. And my other partner, who is a bloke, and we met on Bumble. So props to Bumble on that one. Not props to Bumble for many other things, but at least, they presented me with this person. And he is super lovely. And we had the kind of the brilliant first conversation where my opening question, by this point in my online dating journey, my opening line to someone was, what are your deal breakers? Just to really, really hit the ground running. Because why not? I'm an efficient human. So I hit the ground running with, what are your deal breakers? And he hit me right back with, these are my deal breakers. And I was like, oh my God, I love you. I didn't say that. Not for a little bit later. I have told him now that I love him and he loves me, so it's all fine. But it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, you're on my wavelength. This is fucking great. And yeah, so then, we kept talking, went on a socially distanced date, and it was like, oh, I really like you. And he's like, I also really like you. And we're both in that kind of awkward human phase where we're not very good at talking, but we're just kind of just please understand that my brain likes your brain. We're good, right? And he's actually, because of COVID, just moved in. Yeah, so that's a fun thing that's happened at basically 4 months. But hey, I think I've shared some of my highs and lows and real uglies, and at the end of it all, it's got a really nice happy ending for me, at least, which I'm really pleased about, selfishly. But I think it's been a long journey, and I've had to deal with a lot of shit from a lot of different people, so I deserve it. But it's one of the things, we all deserve to be happy, and we all deserve to be loved, if that's what you want. And there's no shame. There should be no shame in that. And yet there does seem to be this whole thing of how dare you expect, how dare you ask for common human decency? You're asking for too much, and it's I'm really just asking to be treated like a person. That shouldn't be so much to ask.
So that was Ali. I wonder if she's still in relationship bliss. If she's not, I hope she's having fun at least, and has found some allies. I love the story about the guy that used a PowerPoint presentation as his profile pics. A freak in the spreadsheets maybe, but not the freak for Ali as it turned out. I might be mixing my document puns there. I hope I can let that slide. So Ali brings up a lot of important points. This issue of vetting comes up a lot on this podcast. For example, how do you know if the person you're talking to is politically incompatible, or even worse, a sex offender? think I got that the right way around. She certainly had some adventures there, good and bad. Imagine dating someone only to find out after you've slept with them that they're a convicted sex offender, and then not knowing specifically what that offence was. Jeez. I think it's fair to say that Ali leads with her political persuasion, more than immediate physical attraction, for example. But her reasoning is sound, I think. Best to deal with it now than find out further down the line that your core beliefs are not aligned. Do you think it's possible to fall in love with someone, or perhaps more importantly, form a happy long-term relationship with somebody whose core beliefs or interests are seemingly in opposition to your own? If you're a fan of the TV show Friends, did you think Monica should actually have got together with Richard, even though she wanted children and he didn't? Or do you think she was better off with Chandler? I realise that's a culturally specific example, but it's, for some reason, it's the one I always think of. I think Monica should have gone with Richard, even though they had some fundamental differences. Because I think that at the core, they were ultimately compatible. I don't know. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Are we trying to form alliances, or are we trying to fall in love? And I guess that's why it's so hard to find exactly the right person, isn't it? Thanks so much to Ali for her time, her honesty, and yes, her strong opinions. What do you think about what she had to say? Are you an ally of Ali? Are we the sum of our beliefs? We'd love to hear from you about this or anything else, whatever your beliefs. You can contact us at playingwithmatchespodcast@gmail.com, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes. There's also a link in the show notes to our new Facebook page, or you can find it by searching Playing with Matches Podcast on Facebook, and you'll find some other fun bits and pieces on there too. So I think that about wraps us up for this week. Thank you to Elle Berry for helping me edit this podcast. Thank you, Joanna, for making it happen. And thank you to Denise for sharing the interview duties. And thank you to both of you out there for listening. We have some fun and different episodes coming up, and we will see you next Tuesday. Yes, I did. Until then, good luck out there and on there. Bye-bye.